Hello again, and this is the podcast Paranormal Family Therapy, and I am your host, Dr. Darren Wallace. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and a certified addictions counselor, and I have been working with families since 1996, and I've been working with families dealing with paranormal phenomena in family therapy since 2002, so 20 years. Paranormal Family Therapy is a podcast that talks about paranormal phenomena and how the psychotherapeutic community interacts with the paranormal, with family therapy in particular. We have two guests today. I'm excited to have them both. Both have been on the podcast before. The first is Lisa Schulz, and Lisa is a professional medium, an energy healer, and a licensed clinical social worker or therapist. She has been in private practice for over 20 years, serving both children and adults in her clinical practice. Lisa has been a medium her whole life and began working professionally as a medium over 10 years ago. She is passionate about providing hope to clients about the afterlife and loves teaching people ways to connect with their loved ones on the other side. We also have Shannon Keneally with us today. Shannon is also a licensed clinical social worker or therapist, and she has been in private practice with individuals and families. She is a medium who can interpret spiritual energy. She works both as a psychotherapist and as a guide for those seeking spiritual guidance and connection with loved ones who have crossed over. So welcome back, Lisa and Shannon. Welcome to Paranormal Family Therapy. I have a bunch of questions that I've been thinking about for a long time, and now I have both of you here today, so I get to ask you these questions. So I'm hoping that the questions will be intriguing for the two of you and generate some good discussion. So welcome.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
Thank you.
So both of you are mediums and also licensed clinical social workers or therapists, those that aren't familiar with that term. So what's it like for the two of you? I'm just curious, what's it like for the two of you in your everyday lives to encounter spirits that either just kind of show up out of the blue, or you're having a conversation with, a living person speaking to them, and then all of a sudden these spirits show up? What is that like for you? What happens for you when that happens?
To me, I'm able to turn it on, so to speak, and turn it off, this ability, right? Which takes a lot of time and practice to do that. It's not this invasion of people in the spirit world. It can be if you don't have good boundaries around it. So if somebody decides to pop in, so to speak, whether or not I'm in a session with a therapy client, not someone who's there for mediumship, or if I'm at the grocery store or just living my life doing whatever I'm doing, I usually just acknowledge the person in spirit and say something to the effect of "not now" or "I'm not working," and they move on. They just dissipate, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And folks out there, please excuse my voice. I'm getting over some laryngitis, but I totally agree. It's about boundaries. And I do the exact same thing. I will literally in my mind say, "I hear you, but now I can't help you right now."
Right.
Sometimes it works beautifully, and every once in a while there are very just stubborn spirits. That does not happen very often, but it does every once in a while. But yes, boundaries is the absolute key.
Yeah, because it sounds like what you're saying, Shannon, is that they will usually, well, both of you are saying they'll usually listen to you if you tell them, "Okay, not right now," or "I'm not working right now."
Yes.
But then what happens is some of them are fairly persistent. My guess would be they were probably fairly persistent in life, and maybe now they're also persistent, or they're like, "No, this actually can't wait. Yeah, I have to get your attention."
I find that personalities don't change very much just because you crossed over.
Yep, that is true. We still remain who we are. But it could also be someone in spirit who might have a strong urgency to get a message to someone, right? But we had, as professional mediums, we have to honor the boundary of the client that we're sitting with, or the person that we're sitting with, the person here on earth, right? If they didn't come in asking for a reading, we shouldn't just drop one on them. We don't
Wow.
know necessarily what their beliefs are. We don't necessarily know if they're ready to hear the reading or the message from their person in spirit. We don't know any of that. And that would be an invasion on us to do that to them. So I always put it up to this people in spirit and say, if you need to get this message to your loved one, make sure they are ready to hear it. They need to approach me about giving them a reading. I'm not going to approach them with it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. And hopefully they listen to you.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, with the spirits that each of you encounter, how aware are they that you can sense them? That you are a medium, and is there something about you that, well, and I know this is cliche because it comes from a book and that turned into a huge movie, The Shining. It's like, are they aware that you shine? That sort of thing. Can they tell you can sense them, and can they also sense you?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yes. Yes. Our light, when you work in the ethereal realms and you're meditating and you're creating this ability and strengthening this ability to communicate with people on the other side, your light, in a sense, shines brighter or gets their attention more.
Mhm.
And I don't know if this is true for you, Shannon, but I've noticed over the years of doing professional mediumship, I will find that people in the spirit world somehow direct their loved ones to me.
Yes.
They will find a way to get their loved one to come to me in
Yeah.
particular. And I'm sure it happens for other mediums too. I know it's not just exclusive,
Right.
but it's so cool when I hear those stories, when a client shares with me, oh my gosh, you would never believe how I ended up finding you, or something like that. So there definitely for sure is an awareness on the other side of the lights, of the energy vibration of each person here on earth, and who's shining brighter, so to speak, in regards to their ability to perceive the spirit world. Yeah.
Sure. Sure. For me, I've always wondered that. Like I never really had a sense for how they know. It feels like I have a big sign on my forehead that says, I can hear you, or see you. So for me, it wasn't very clear how they could. So I like what you just said.
Yep.
Makes a lot of
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because at least I know in those haunted house cases that where there is a meeting that I've done family therapy where their house is haunted, is that when there's a medium in the house, the spirits definitely understand that they're like attracted to that person. And that might even be why they're
Yes.
at that house. And
Mhm.
Yes.
so, yeah. Okay. All right. Well, that's interesting that they can know that, and then yeah, send people to you.
Yep.
Yeah, somehow they can get that message
Yep.
across.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Now each one of you had a process that you went through in your life that helped you to really embrace being a medium. So help us to understand what that process was like for you, and more specifically, who around you supported this process so that each one of you could really embrace your sensitivity to the spiritual realm. Hmm?
For me, it was a very gradual process. I knew I had I had experiences as a child very often that were very scary for me.
Hmm.
And I think I just shut it down for a long time until someone said to me, it was actually another medium guy, he worked with other people, and said, this is what's going on with you. And so I heard them. And at the time I heard that message, I was not a believer in mediumship at all. I thought it was just hogwash.
Hmm.
And so I considered it, and through meditation, conversation, my own work with another social worker, I sort of gradually came to sort of opening that piece of myself up. So for
Mhm.
me, it's a very, very slow process.
Hmm.
And once I acknowledged it, and then the floodgates opened, and then it was all about boundaries for me. the people in my life who helped me, I would say was a wonderful social worker who I went to for therapy. She was amazing and she helped me a ton to help acknowledge that, understand it, learn how to work with it. And my mom, she's also very sensitive. And
Yeah.
she would always say, okay, what are you feeling? What are you hearing? Tell me about it. Use your voice. What are they saying? And that
Hmm.
was very helpful. I hope that
Hmm.
answers your
Yeah.
question.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Similarly to Shannon, I also was very reluctant to embrace these abilities, and I was certainly wasn't sure what to do with them before I had developed a bit as a medium. As Darren had said in the intro, I've been a medium my whole life. I had experiences as a child too, but I grew up in the 80s and there was no reality shows back then.
Mhm.
There was no reference for mediumship.
No.
And as a kid, you also don't realize like that other people aren't having the same types of experiences as you,
Right.
right? And I don't know about you, Shannon, but for me, it wasn't like every day something traumatizing or something scary would happen or something paranormal would happen to me. But I had had several incidences as a child and growing up into my early 20s that I knew by then it was paranormal, like it couldn't be explained, but I didn't know what to do with it. So I would just dismiss it and move on with my
Right.
life. And it really wasn't until I was in my 40s that I was at a conference with a week long training with James Van Praagh. If people know who he is, he's a famous American medium. He's written a bunch of books. He was on Oprah and Larry King Live back in the day. And I'd always been so interested in mediumship, never really thinking that I could do it. I knew things happened to me, but I never thought I could interact with the spirit world.
Sure.
It was like it was just happening to me. But I was always interested in it. So I read all of James's books anyway. Long story short, I end up in this energy awareness type weekend workshop. And at this point, during this weekend, we had to meet up with a partner and give them a reading, a mediumship reading. And I immediately broke out into a sweat thinking, oh my God, I cannot do this. I am not a medium. No way, I can't do it. And James took us all through it. And sure enough, I gave a reading to this lady and I couldn't believe I did it. Like that was a turning point for me.
Yeah.
And so at this point, I was like, okay, I'm going to explore this more. I'm going to see what I can do with it. But I was very private about it. I'm
Mhm.
a licensed therapist. I did not want anyone to ever know that I was exploring this side of myself because I was like, what will people think? Are they going to think I'm crazy? Like I don't want that, like I never thought it wasn't even on my radar then that I would take it public, that I would
Right.
ever give a reading for someone else. I just wanted to see what I was capable of.
Uh-huh.
And then one thing led to another, and I continued on with James Van Praag's courses. He's got an online school, and I progressed through all those mediumship courses. And in those courses, you had to give readings to other people. And so I started giving readings to other people and submitting them to him, the video to him to move on. And word of mouth started spreading. And then I started getting more and more clients. And now it's something that I do. And emotionally for me it took a while for me to embrace it and feel confident enough to be professional about it, but here I am all these years later, and it's something that I do, and I take it very seriously, and mediumship is legitimate. It really is.
Mhm.
It is legitimate, it's real, and I hope that more people can learn to embrace it as they learn more about it versus thinking it's just this spooky woo woo stuff that's out there.
Yeah, and I think it's important to be able to, talk about this and so that folks, because both of you really had a very similar experience, which was, I'm not sure I want to, nurture this part of myself. And maybe there were folks around that would nurture that with you, which I am curious about, but that it wasn't until you grew as people that then all of a sudden you embrace this, right? That's what it sounds like, that even though you knew this was true for you, that you kind of pushed it aside or denied it at some level before you
Absolutely.
fully embraced it, right?
Yeah, completely denied it for a while, and then didn't want to deny it anymore, but also didn't want to sort of come out of the closet. And
Yeah.
I think that the difference between Shannon and I is I did not have anyone in my life supporting me.
Mhm.
I absolutely did not. And so with the courses I took with James Van Praagh, I'd say I got support on my own just from learning and education. And then I started moving into groups within his course. So I met people and they became my support person. They started normalizing things for me. They were going through similar things that I was. But in my own personal life, I had no one that was, you know, willing to. My mom was a little curious about it because she's always been open to this stuff, but she certainly, wasn't like, you should go for it. There was none of that. I was just kind of on my own, and that's it.
Yeah,
So
she's like, be careful with this. Yeah, like who you
exactly.
tell. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. And I was
Mhm.
for a long time.
You
Okay.
have to be careful.
You
Yes,
do.
I agree.
Yeah, who you let know. Yeah. Okay. Well, the next question I have, I've actually been waiting a long time to be able to ask it because I have had mediums discuss this with me, but I haven't had the chance to really be able to ask questions around it. And so now here I go. So, what are the abilities of a medium that they're able to sense that another person is a medium? Like what I just heard as an example was that spirits can kind of see, a big, come talk to me sign on your head, or you shine, right?
Mhm.
Whatever that is. Are you also able to sense that in other people? Because it does appear that some mediums are.
Yeah, yes. The short answer is yes. And I think it goes along with being a therapist as
Uh-huh.
well. Like, we are so used to tuning into our client. We're so
Yeah.
used to tuning into another person. And
Hmm.
we can kind of get a sense about them even outside of mediumship. Like, oh, this person is really good at crunching numbers, or they're really good at details, or another person's really great at party planning or something. We can also sense like how intuitive someone may be, right? It's just
Hmm.
part of the person, their personality as
Yeah.
well. It's just a
Okay.
knowing. It's just a
Hmm.
knowing.
Yeah, I would say for me, there is, and I think she hit the nail on the head. I think it's part of our job. But for me, most of the time when I get the sense that someone is also a medium, it's through spirit. I'll hear the information through the spirit that's around them.
Mm.
Right? And so I'll clue in to say, oh, okay, you're around them because they can feel you and see you and hear you. And so for me, that's the strongest piece of information that I have is what I'm
Hmm.
hearing from the other side.
Oh, okay. So directly from from
Yes.
spirits
Yes,
themselves that
absolutely.
they're
Yes.
okay.
Yes. Do I have a sixth sense? Yes, but it's not as strong as what I hear.
Okay. All right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. This has happened a couple of times on haunted house cases where I'm doing the family therapy and there's a paranormal team or a medium that comes in. Like one I remember, a paranormal team, one of their team members is a medium, came in and did an investigation in the house for the family that I was doing family therapy with for them. And part of the information is that the medium knew that one of the family members was a medium, and they were able to sense that. And so I didn't know, exactly what that was all about. It was interest me at the time, but we were we were talking about family therapy and how that information could be helpful for the family therapy that I was doing. So I didn't get a chance to discuss that. Like, how do you know that? Yeah, with the medium that I
Right.
was talking to on the phone. And so anyway, I've always been curious about that. So it sounds like it's information that the spirits are telling you, and information that when you're with the person who is also a medium, that you're picking up on some of those things, which therapists do and mediums can do as well.
Yeah, because it's
Yeah.
like a part of their personality, just like maybe someone who's detail oriented, or somebody
Mhm.
who's really, loves to travel. Like, you can just pick up that they have this ability, maybe strong. And I really believe all of us have a sixth sense. We all have
Mhm.
Absolutely.
psychic ability. It's on a spectrum,
Yeah.
Yes.
and some people are just stronger than others with it. And so you can sense it. But this is also a really good example of how all mediums work a little differently. Shannon says she hears it from spirit. I don't hear it from spirit like auditorily. I feel it. So
Ah,
information from the spirit world comes through in images, thoughts, feelings, words sometimes, but we all as mediums work a little bit differently and
Yeah.
we pick up that information a little differently.
Yes.
Hmm. Yeah, it's like you're all attuned to basically the same thing, but you're approaching it, I guess, from a different angle,
We
right?
receive it differently. We
Yeah.
receive the
Mhm.
information differently.
Yes.
Yeah, that's important. Yeah, that's good to know. That's good. This stuff is always so cool to me. So another main question that I have for the two of you is that you're both working as mediums, and from both of you, your personal and professional experience, what are some of the most important things that a therapist, someone like me, working with a medium would need to understand? What can I understand that will be helpful about working with mediums?
That's a big question.
Yes. Very good question.
Uh-huh.
That's a big one.
Uh-huh.
It
You know, the
is.
first thing I would say is to believe that this is possible.
Mhm.
You know, I think that there's a lot of people in the world who, although we have definitely warmed up to mediumship and it's become more normalized with the shows and things like that, there's still a lot of people who don't believe, and therapy tends to fall under the umbrella of science,
Mhm.
right? And so people who are more I don't think that, you know, a lot of therapists embrace spirituality, maybe more so now, but I think that, you know, through the last few decades, it's been more about, nope, it's got to be science based and it's very mechanical. And yes, that is true. All of that is true. I'm not dismissing any of it, but, you know, I think that therapists need to be more open to someone's spiritual beliefs, more religious beliefs. Maybe that's what it is. The invisible realms around us. And if you are a medium and going to see a therapist and you have a therapist who does not believe in the invisible realms or heaven or the afterlife or any of that, that's probably not who you should be working with if
Yeah.
you want to discuss your abilities.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I would also say if you're working directly with a medium, like in a session, I
Mhm.
would say also therapists should look for themes in the message. So when the medium is doing their thing, oftentimes spirit comes through and there are several themes within the reading. And what are those themes? How are they important to the client? How can you use that information to help them move forward after the medium leaves?
Mhm.
Right. So it's tuning into the overall meat of the message,
Mhm.
I think, to
Okay.
help the client continue their work after the medium leaves.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think
Yeah.
also as a therapist,
Mhm.
sorry, Darren,
Oh, no, go
as a
ahead.
therapist, if you're working and your client is a medium, just to be curious,
Yes.
what's this like for you? Do you have
Mhm.
boundaries around this ability?
Mhm.
Right? Do you feel, has this somehow rattled you in some way? Have you had a scary experience? Have you had trauma associated with this? Like what? Just really truly being curious, because I don't think there's a guidebook. Oh, actually,
Mhm.
let me reframe that. There is no guidebook for a therapist who's working with a client who is a medium.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
You know, that's what I would say is stay curious, and you will have a lot to learn, and you will hear some really interesting stories if you have a medium as your client, that's for sure.
Uh-huh. What I'm actually hearing from the two of you, if folks just tuned into this without knowing that I asked how to work with a medium, is really I'm hearing the two of you say you work with them as you would anyone else, with an emphasis of being open, to what they have to say. But those same questions would be similar as to how you would ask somebody who had some kind of traumatic event. What was the trauma? What was this like for you? What do you experience? How do you feel about it? What are your thoughts? What do you do with this? Like all of that seems to me it's very similar. So I'm very pleased that you all said that, because I think, folks that are watching this, hopefully the therapists that are watching this and the mediums that are watching this, that they can have an understanding that really it's the process can be very similar when working with a medium, is just being very open to what they have to say, which is probably what you need to do anyway if you're if you're a therapist and doing individual or group therapy, family therapy with them,
Mhm.
is that you still ask the same kinds of questions. You're empathetic and you want to be curious and all of that. That makes sense. That regardless of if they're a medium or not, that's what you would do. And so, acting similarly with both of them.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. All right. So, in the case where there isn't another medium in the family, like for Shannon, your personal experience was that your mother is also very sensitive.
Yes.
And in the case where there isn't another medium in the family or somebody to, help folks along, sounds like Lisa, this was
Mhm.
the case for you. What can be done by family members that can be supportive of a medium in their family? So in other words, what can I as a family therapist help the family members do to be supportive of the medium in the family?
Sure. I think it piggybacks off of what Lisa said in the previous question, right? I
Yeah.
think it's about curiosity. It's about really listening and trying to understand what the child might be thinking and feeling and hearing and experiencing. It's non-judgmental,
Hmm. Yeah.
regardless of whether it's really happening or not. The child is still experiencing something. So
Yeah.
getting curious about the experience and having them put language to it, I think is the most important piece.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I think that, as I said before, to
Mhm.
believe them. And if
Hmm.
you take them to a therapist, find a therapist who's definitely open to this,
Yes.
right? And the therapist's job would be to be screening, again, depending on the age of the child. Is there something else going on? Is there mental illness? Is there something else happening here? Or is this truly an ability?
Hmm.
And then I think also to be learning about how mediumship actually works, to take down the level of fear for the parents as well and other family members. Like, what are the mechanics of mediumship? How is it that my child can perceive all of these things? Right. Because when the parents and other caregivers understand it in a way that's not scary and spooky, then it opens them up to be more supportive of the child versus thinking, oh my gosh, what's happening to my kid? They're scaring me now.
Yeah.
Right. So I think the education is a really big piece too.
Yeah, that's pretty important. Both of the things that both of you are talking about, which is I'm hearing you both say it's important to be able to educate themselves, the family members. It's important to be able to listen. It's important to be able to be empathetic. What I didn't hear you say is giving advice. Like, so family members, especially if they don't understand something, they might tend to give advice to somebody. But what I'm hearing from the two of you now, maybe they could give some advice, but what I'm hearing from the two of you is that really what the family members can work at is listening carefully to what their loved one who's a medium has to say, what they
Yes.
feel like, what it's like for them, do some research about, what might be going on so that what they're hearing, the family members, what they're hearing, they have maybe a context around it. And so that can be helpful for the child, especially if it's a child,
Mhm.
to be able to support them.
Mhm. Yep.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, sounds good. It really does. I know I just said this a few minutes ago, but it really that's a similar process, regardless if somebody was a medium or not. How important that would be when a child or a family member is experiencing any kind of issue, whatever it is, whether they're a medium or not, the family member could really do that. Like, they could really listen, they can be empathetic, they can educate themselves on what's going on for the person. Yeah, and how important that can be.
Right.
I I have a story I could share about this
Yeah,
from
please.
many years ago. So when I first started my career as a therapist, I worked with children for the first
Mhm.
decade of my career, and so this is before I had embraced my own mediumship abilities. I was open to it. I was reading about it, just didn't think I could ever, interact with the spirit world, but totally was open to the invisible realm. Well, anyways, I had this little boy that was my client. He was 9 years old at the time, and he had come in for I forget exactly why it was. I think probably behavioral problems. It turned out he had some sensory processing issues. Now we're going way back in time into the early 2000s. So sensory was not really talked about back then like it
Mhm.
is today. Okay.
Yeah.
So he had all these things going on with him. And I remember working a lot with the family around that. Like he needs PT and OT, blah, blah, blah. Well, anyway, I worked with them for a while, and it came out in one of our sessions that this child, my client, had kept seeing a woman in the house. Now, that's not why they came to me, but this is
Mhm.
the story unfolded. And he kept seeing this woman in the house, and it would freak him out. It would freak him out. And they had moved into this house. It was a used house before they didn't build it. It was a used house. And he kept seeing this lady in this one bedroom. And the parents didn't know what to do with it. They had no idea what to do with it. Right. And so they just were like, "Oh, okay, you see this lady. Okay." Well, he would, he was obviously very startled by this. Well, anyhow, the mom one day was cleaning out the closet, just clean, reorganizing, cleaning out. And she saw in the very back, tucked away, were ashes. So a person who had been cremated, okay,
Mm.
was in the top of the closet in the corner. And as is going through this box, there's a photo in there. So she takes out the photo, and her son walks in for something, "Mom, I need this, whatever." And he sees the photo. He goes, "That's the lady. That's who I see." And she knew in that moment that she could believe her son. Like
Yeah.
that was the reality for her. She was like, "Oh my God, he's seeing a ghost." That's how she
Yeah.
put it, right? He's seeing a ghost. But she didn't know what to do with that either.
Mhm.
And again, we're going back 20 some years.
Yeah.
But
Uh-huh.
they did felt safe enough to talk to me about it. And I remember my response was, "Well, he has an ability, you know."
Yeah.
But he said also that he never saw anybody else after that. This certainly
Mm.
wasn't something that happened all the time. It was just this one lady. And I think that also highlights that kids tend to, in general, have more of an ability for mediumship because they're not so closed off as
Yeah.
adults are, where we
Mhm.
talk ourselves out of it. If we see something, feel something, sense something, we talk ourselves out of it. "Oh, no,
Mhm.
that's not a sign. Oh, I didn't really see that. Oh, I didn't really hear that."
Uh-huh.
Little kids are like, "Hey, this is what happened to me."
That's
Yeah.
Right?
right.
Yeah. So anyways, that's an example of me, in the early days, just stumbling upon that as a therapist.
Well, this leads to my next question, which is I'm also interested in, and is that I'm curious how folks with abilities similar to the two of you, how they're able to either permanently or temporarily shut them off. Now, I think this is important for someone like me, who's just like a regular old person therapist that works with mediums on occasion, uh, that they need to be able to do this, and sometimes they have trouble shutting down. So, what is that process? How do folks that are mediums shut down their abilities, so that they can go to sleep or something won't bother them or whatever is going on? How do you do that?
A complicated question.
Yeah.
um, and I think everybody's process is probably a little different. But I
Mhm.
think the important thing is that you have a process and
Hmm.
that you use it regularly. For me, it is meditation and prayer. It's something that I do regularly, and it's important for me to keep doing that so that I can create boundaries and stay grounded, stay present. And so, but there are some people who work with guides on the other side. There are some people who, set up intention, thought intention in their home, around them. Really, it runs the gamut for people. But again, the important thing is to consistently create the boundary for yourself and your
Hmm.
Absolutely.
space.
Absolutely. I learned that when we are connecting in with the spirit world, and my process is before I give a reading, I open myself up, so to speak, energetically. I intentionally expand my energy. I lift my energy and my awareness up as high as I can. And we have chakra points, right? We have chakra points. Everyone's heard about it. Like the Reiki, people who do
Uh-huh.
Reiki work with the chakra points. And there's hundreds of chakra points on us actually, but there's seven main ones. So I go through a whole before I give a reading, I open up each chakra point and clean it out, each one.
Hmm.
And you can visualize it like kind of like a rose, like a flower. So a rose that's about to bloom, that's like the bud that's going to bloom. So I open up each chakra, right? And then when I'm done with the reading and I don't want to be aware of the spirit world so much because that can be really overwhelming, I visualize the flower closing again, like
Hmm.
closing up. The other thing you can do to turn it off, so to speak, is imagine each chakra point as a light switch. You turn them, flip them on, and then you flip them off. And that's it. You can just shut them all off like that. And it
Uh-huh.
could be as instantaneous as that. And if somebody wants to be sneaky and try to get in and get your attention, say, nope, not now. I'm not working.
Mhm.
I'm not working.
Yes.
And you move on. It's a boundary. You got to keep that boundary. You just do.
Okay.
Mhm.
That's interesting. Yeah, because I think it's information like that can be helpful for like regular old dudes like me that don't have abilities like the two of you to be able to help folks be able to do so, so that they can go to sleep, so that they can carry about on through their day, especially if it's a kid. When these things are showing up, because it sounds like what happens is they have these abilities and they're on all the time and they don't know how to shut them off. So yeah, I
Mhm.
think that information can be helpful for
For sure.
therapists working with folks. Yeah.
Absolutely. For kids, it's a little harder, I think. It
Hmm.
takes, it's a slower process for them
Yeah.
to really understand what is their energy and
Hmm.
what is the external energy.
Mhm.
Hmm.
And it's slowly introducing them to those concepts to know, okay, I'm feeling something outside of myself. I can start to begin to shut it down and to
Uh-huh.
close the door.
Yep.
Right. So for kids, it's more of a process for sure.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and I think that reminding or teaching kids and adults too that you are sovereign over your space and you allow whoever you allow to come in can come in, and when you tell someone to go away, they need to go away. It's kind
Hmm.
of like for a kid, maybe when they go to their bedroom and they shut the door, they're not going to let their siblings in, right?
Right.
It's like, go away, stay out. That's my boundary. It's the same thing if, as a child, if you see somebody in the spirit world who's talking to you or wants your attention, say, not now. I want to go to bed. Leave me alone. Leave me alone.
Hmm.
Maybe attach a prayer to it,
Yeah.
whatever you might need to do. You could even as a parent, take some like, a parent could buy some essential oil like that has sage or frankincense, Palo Santo, like a protective oil. You could spray your child before they go to sleep. As a therapist, what I would do when I worked with kids, I did like this magic spray, for my kids for when they would leave the therapy office. And it certainly wasn't essential oils. I think it was probably something from Bath and Body Works. But like I would spray the doorway and they would walk through it. And I was like, okay, now we're done. We're leaving the therapy stuff, the traumas here. And now you're walking through the magic mist and you're okay. Right.
Yes.
So you can use those types of tools for kids too. Okay, we're putting your protection on.
Hmm.
Spray, spray
Yep.
that over your child, pray over your child, pray with your child, encourage them to say goodbye, shut the door, so to speak. Those types of things are very empowering for kids because we don't want kids to feel overwhelmed. We don't even want an adult to feel overwhelmed
Mm.
with the spirit world. And it can be that way if you don't have boundaries.
Oh, that's helpful. Yeah, because I think that some of that can best be done by somebody who's also a sensitive. But for those who don't know, the three of us were in the in Colorado in the greater metro Denver area, which is obviously a large city, and there may not be mediums who are also therapists that can help people in the ways that and understand things in the ways that the two of you do. So I think it's helpful to be able to share that information with regular therapists that that they can do some of these things, because what I'm hearing with that is there's some visualization that can take place that you can help folks do, that like picturing in their mind how to shut something off or how to open something up,
Yep.
and that
Right.
makes sense.
Mhm.
Exactly. It's very similar to how we receive information from spirit, right?
Yeah.
Thought intention is energy.
Yeah.
We create a picture in our head. It's thought intention. It manifests in the energy world.
Oh, that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what might be some of the things that the two of you would like therapists who are interacting with mediums to know, especially if there's some mental health issues associated with their sensitivity to the spiritual realm? How might they be helpful? The therapists be helpful to folks that are sensitive to these things, but there might also be some mental health issues.
So that's big, right? That's
Uh-huh.
really, really big.
Yeah.
And I think that boils down to education with your client
Mhm.
about what is mental health. So, for example, if we're talking about someone who maybe has bipolar disorder with psychotic episodes, okay, what's a psychotic episode, right?
Mhm.
What was that like for you? How can we help our client distinguish between a manic episode, maybe with some psychosis in there, an actual connection with spirit, right?
Mhm.
So it's really about all that education because they're two different things. And it's it's a complicated, very unique intervention with each particular client.
Yes.
Yeah, I do think that mental health and sensitivity to the spiritual realm does interact with each other. And sometimes we, as therapists, we have somebody who is sensitive to the spiritual realm that also has either, psychotic features or mental health issues, and that those
Mhm.
things aren't necessarily mutually exclusive, like they can exist with each other. And sometimes it's important to be able to work with both at the same time.
Mhm. Yeah. But again, with the boundaries too, is if the hope is that you can get your client, if they are, let's again, using the example of bipolar with psychotic episodes, that
Mhm.
they are able to identify, okay, that's what this is right now,
Yeah.
versus them maybe trying to do something in the mediumistic realm, such as dropping a reading on someone or telling someone, oh, you're going to die. I just know it. That is very concerning and reckless, dare I say, right? So
Mhm.
it's like we
Yeah.
have to, if we have mental health issues, if we have a diagnosis, we have to be very, very careful and responsible with our abilities. We all do, even if we don't have a diagnosis. We need to be very, very careful with our abilities as a medium, but
Mhm.
even more so if there is a true mood disorder or mental illness that we live with day in and day out.
Yeah. Mhm. Now, Shannon and I actually do have a story where I was using her office once a few years ago, where I was seeing a client who has DID, so dissociative identity disorder,
Mhm.
or what's known commonly as multiple personality disorder, and who's also a medium. And how I would meet with he and his wife in a separate office, and then once some things changed around that office, then I needed to be able to see them in Shannon's office. And what happened was, once we entered into Shannon's office to do therapy for a few sessions, he turned to me and he said, "What's up with this office?" And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And he said, "He goes, well, the spirits can't come in here. The ones that are bothering me can't come inside this office. What's up with this office?" And I said, "Well, yeah, just so that you know, the owner of this office is actually a medium, and I'm sure she has some kind of barrier so that these things can't come in here." And so that was one of the instances where there was psychosis and mediumship at the same time, and that they kind of came together, and that was evidence, at least for me, that he was the real deal with both,
Mhm.
because he could sense that these things couldn't come in there, and that he clearly had different personalities that would come out and stuff like that. And so that was amazing, how those things interacted with one another. It was fascinating that when it happened.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was interesting.
Well,
Yeah.
how validating, right? For
Well,
him.
yeah, and it made
How
sense.
validating.
And it wasn't something where I doubted necessarily that, these things were happening to him, but it did make sense once he noticed that I was like, yeah, okay, he's, the real deal when it comes to being a medium as well. He's truly sensitive to these things.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Well, is there anything that the two of you would want to put out there to folks watching this, as far as information about the work that you do that's important, or anything that you'd like for them to understand about the work that you do before we cut out for the day?
I think that for the therapists who are listening, to, as I said before, to believe your clients.
Mhm.
And if you feel that you're not a good fit for the client because maybe, just can't wrap your mind around this, or you don't feel that you could be helpful, You could always refer your client to a medium for some consultation about the mediumship piece, not for
Mhm.
the mental health or whatever else they brought them to therapy. I would definitely be talking and encouraging therapists to collaborate with credible mediums for sure. If you have clients who are experiencing these things, and even clients who might not be a medium but who have experienced paranormal activity in their home and who might be traumatized by it or really affected by it, I would definitely say be collaborating with maybe some paranormal groups who can do investigations, mediums, all those types of things to help support your clients, and be willing to listen and be willing to believe them. This is something that really did happen to them, and refer out if necessary.
Yeah. Okay.
Like,
Good advice.
absolutely. And actually, Lisa and I were talking about this before the show. When when starting that process, it's important to look for somebody who has the education and the sort of the work experience that might be particularly helpful for the client that you're referring out to. There's a lot of people that come out there and they hang a shingle and they may not have the education or the experience to really help someone. And so I think it's important just to do the due diligence, really looking to see who's out there who could be credible, who might be very helpful.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's good advice. And so I hope people can hear that. Thank you both. I really appreciate you coming on. So Lisa and Shannon, for being with us here today. So Lisa Scholes and Shannon Keneally, I appreciate your time and your stories and your advice, because I think it's going to be very helpful for therapists that are watching this, and folks that have sensitivity to this sort of thing, to be able to hear some of this advice and some of your experiences. So thank you both for being here. And thank you all for listening today. This has been Paranormal Family Therapy. And I am your host, Dr. Darren Wallace. And thank you. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Darren. Bye, everybody.
Bye bye.